Dogs open up your world. Every breed and creed, size and age of dog can benefit in some manner. Enrichment is such an upcoming field. I'm always happy to talk about it.
Hello everyone, welcome to another Geppo interview. We have today a special guest. Her name is Zoe. It's a pleasure to have you here.
It's great to be here. I'm delighted to be on talking about one of my favourite topics. Canine enrichment, can't go wrong.
So first question, can you tell us more about yourself?
My name is Zoë-Louise. I'm a 23-year-old zoology student, originally from Meath, but I moved to Cork a fair few years ago now. From the time I was a kid, my whole life just revolved around animals. You know, from the time I could walk, we were off to the beach to look for crabs in the rock pools, or off to the zoo to watch the animals, or if it was a rainy day, we'd be stuck in front of Nat Geo watching David Attenborough for hours. So my whole life has always been around animals. And as I grew up and as I kind of expanded my career, it just kind of naturally spilt into it. Everything furred, feathered and finned kind of came into my life. So I obviously am pursuing a zoology degree. I work part-time in pet retail. And when the time was right, I adopted my boy Robert. He's a 6-year-old greyhound. And that kind of opened up the world of dog training, dog tricks, dog enrichment, dog nutrition, you name it. But the main thing that we're here to talk about today is obviously the enrichment side of it. And that's done such wonders for Robert as a dog and for me as an owner.
All right, Zoe. Thank you for that. Next question. I know that you are expert of the dog enrichment. You are practicing it since a long time. So can you tell us what is the dog enrichment, like your definition of it?
To me, dog enrichment is more so about allowing a dog to partake in natural behaviors, you know, something that's constructive or mentally rewarding. It's allowing a dog to use their nose, their eyes, their ears in a way that's going to benefit them, reducing anxiety, reducing frustration, or building a healthy tolerance of frustration. It kind of reduces those negative emotions. It allows a dog to use their brain to just build that confidence, explore the world in a way that's enriching, just as it sounds, you know.
If we have to compare dog enrichment with humans, what that would be?
Well, I'd like to think of it like this. After I come home from a day of work, I sit down and I read a book. My dog, he goes for his physical walk, but when he comes home, I just expect him to go to bed. So for him, sniffing or doing a puzzle toy or having a game or some kind of mental enrichment is the equivalent of reading a book or watching a movie or engaging with friends on social media. It's the same thing we do, just in dog form.
Yeah, it's like the Netflix for dogs or a game.
Well, life is so work, work, work. Dogs have work, work, work as well, but we all need some kind of play. And for dogs, that can be something as simple as a sniffy game. That's an enriching game for them, helps them unwind after a day of work, work, work. All work and no play makes Robert a very dull dog. So we keep the games going.
That's a great comparison. Next question. Why do you think is it useful to practice the dog enrichment?
Well, physically and mentally, enrichment benefits a dog. You know, the physical act of sniffing or chewing or licking, it helps to relieve anxiety. It's been shown to reduce blood pressure. Even 10 minutes of sniffing can reduce anxiety and blood pressure in dogs, something significant, which is great for dogs that do have anxiety or maybe recovering from illness and whatnot and can't get out and do those high drive activities. The physical act of those sniffing, chewing, licking, they make physical benefits as well. You know, they help to build confidence, build a good bond between human and owner. In the world we live in now is so confining for pets. It's not like they can just run off across the fields for hours a day. So allowing them to partake in those natural behaviours in a constructive manner can also help reduce those bad behaviours that we so often see people complaining about, the chewing and the licking of things that they shouldn't be chewing and licking. So for me, enrichment it's a natural method of controlling a dog's behaviours in a beneficial way.
And that's basically because they use their intelligence to solve this game instead to solve another game that could be destroy your flip-flop or destroy anything else in the house, right?
Exactly. If you give a dog a constructive outlet for those natural behaviours, they're less likely to go and find their own destructive outlet for those behaviours. So giving them a bottle in a sock full of treats to crunch and find means that they're not going to go and find their own version, which might just happen to be the couch cushions.
That's true. We went to a shelter a few days ago and we did the exact game, the battle in a sock. And it was really funny to see the shelter dogs, you know, having fun and kind of relieve stress. It was wonderful. So that's a great game, actually.
It's just something so simple, but the benefits of it alone can be seen pretty much immediately.
Yeah. And do you think that the benefit of dog enrichment will be seen like really soon, like immediately, or you have to wait until, I don't know, your dog understand the game of the enrichment?
I think it depends on individual dogs, and obviously that's why we tailor enrichment for individual dogs. If you've got a dog that's maybe on crate rest after surgery, something like a sniffy game or a bottle in a sock can have immediate, like, visible changes because they've got an outlet, whereas they can't actually go out for their walk or their run. They've got this immediate outlet. For a dog that might be having some minor behavioral issues like separation anxiety, a small enrichment game might just take that edge off for a few minutes to open them up for more training to like help relieve that issue long term. So I think it really depends on individual animals, individual cases, and that's why tailoring enrichment is so important.
So just out of curiosity, we talked about dog enrichment, you gave us a definition, but how did you discover it?
So when I first adopted my boy Robert, he was a very shut down dog. He is a rescue. He spent his entire life in kennels, with the only outlet outside of those kennels being coursing or some kind of training for that sport. He didn't know what life outside of kennels was like. It was just overwhelming. Everything about our city centre apartment was overwhelming. Everything outside our city centre apartment was overwhelming. He had so many hurdles to overcome. So when we were starting to see some issues pop up, minor resource guarding, minor fear of leaving the house, we turned to a lot of dog groups on Facebook, and over and over and over again, the word Kong kept coming up. And I think most people are in the dog community are aware of what a Kong is. But I was a very broke college student. I couldn't afford to be buying so many Kongs. So I started getting into the DIY side of it. I started finding my own alternatives. And it kind of just snowballed from there. And they have helped Robert significantly. The act of chewing and licking and figuring things out has built his confidence, and it's unlocked a door that was previously locked for him in terms of training and socializing and desensitizing to the world that is outside kennels, because it is a very big world.
Yeah, actually it is. I'm really glad that you said that basically, you didn't have enough money to buy all the enrichment like Kong or other puzzle toys that you can find around that can be really expensive. And so you found a way to say, all right, okay, I don't have enough money to buy that, but my dog needs to do these games, right? So you found the enrichment, just out of a problem. That's great.
Well, at the time, there wasn't a huge amount of enrichment toys on the market. So the few that were around, predominantly things like Kong or Topple or the Nina Austin puzzles, they were the kind of real only ones on the market. And they are quite pricey. And yeah, they can be worth it in some situations. But as I said, I was a broke college student, and I've worked my way up the ladder. I'm not as broke anymore, but I still couldn't be affording half of those puzzles. And you can get just as much enrichment out of the recycling as some of those very expensive snuffle mats and all these expensive products. And if you're anyway crafty, you can make so many versions of it. Now, as I said, some people do prefer to just buy that puzzle toy, and if it benefits the dog, well, that's the best thing for it. But if you're in a situation where you can't afford all these expensive toys, and it can be very easy to get wrapped up in I need this toy. If you're anyway crafty, or if you have any kind of connections in the dog community, there's often trading going on, there's discount codes everywhere, and you can make things so easily.
Actually, that's what inspired like Geppo, because we said the same thing, like you don't need a lot of money to enrich your dog. You need what you are throwing away right now. And so we said, all right, okay, let's build all the enrichment that we can build. And we found out that building the enrichment is not just good for you because, you practice to create some, humans like to create new stuff, right? So you have some kind of excitement when you start to create this enrichment, see if it works later. But it actually helps you to bond more with the dog. Like just the act to create something for him, you grow the relationship.
It's enriching for both human and hound in that situation.
Exactly. What are the enrichment games that you enjoy most?
Well, for Robert, he's very food motivated, like very food motivated. So we tend to focus a lot on food-based puzzles, throwing food around the kitchen from the snuffle out, stuffing food in puzzles for him to chew and lick out. Food-based puzzles would be our main kind of go. But on the backside of that, we do tend to do a lot of like outdoor physical sniffy kind of things, using his nose just does wonders for Rob. It just reduces any of that anxiety that might pop up every now and again. It's been 3 years since I've adopted him and he still has off days like. And on those off days, we'll stick him on a long line and we'll go for a cross-country walk where he can just sniff and sniff and sniff. Doesn't cost a penny. It does him a world of good. And it gets me out walking, which on the backside ain't such a bad thing. So food-based would be our number one, because mainly we do use enrichment to kind of help Rob settle in the evenings. Just when, the city tends to get a bit louder, we want everyone to stay calm inside. But during the day, we'd be a lot more sniff-based. Sniff walks, sniff-aries, sniff hikes, you name it. Anything with a nose in it.
Anything that, it's where it's involved the nose of Robert is, he's excited.
I'll bring a handful of treats with me on a walk and I'll just toss one or two into some long grass and that keeps him busy for an extra 10 minutes, like. Then we move on to the next tuft where I'll toss in a couple more.
How long, it will last a walk with him?
Well, obviously it depends on the weather and, the time we have going. But if I had a whole day off and I had nothing to do, take him for a walk, we could be out for 2 or 3 hours just walking around a park.
And when you return home, he will be in the bed for basically all the day?
I'd have to put him in bed. I'd have to carry him into the bed. He is exhausted. The physical act of sniffing and the mental benefits and the mental relaxation of it just puts them straight to sleep. It really is incredible to see. I think sniff walks and sniff-aries or anything scent-based, anything where a dog can use their nose, I think that's one of the realms of enrichment that you will see some pretty much immediate changes in your dog's behavior. It's just so relaxing and beneficial for them.
How often do you practice the dog enrichment? Every day, or you do it every 2 days? I don't know.
We would do some form of canine enrichment daily, oftentimes twice a day, but that's obviously due to individual dogs. Robert is a bit more of an active hound when it comes to greyhounds, which are notoriously lazy. He is that little bit more active. We would generally do maybe 2 defined enrichment sessions a day, but on an average week we get something done every day. That could be something as simple as just bringing a handful of treats on the walk and then halfway through the walk nipping into a park to do a dedicated 10-15 minute sniff-ary session. That could be something like what I call a destruction box, which is just a box of recycling, all scattered food through, get some sniffing, get some working. That could be something like some kind of form of licky mat or licking surface for him to kind of have a lick on. It could be a plastic bottle in a sock. That's probably one of our go-tos. It's probably the easiest thing to do for an evening enrichment kind of game. I'd say at least once a day, but on average probably about twice.
That's great. And for the people that will listen to us, do you need a lot of time to do that? Do you have your day full of enrichment, or you actually need just a few minutes to enrich your dog?
You don't need to give up whole times of your day. I know I'm saying here I go out for hours walks, but that's a once a week kind of thing. To enrich your dog on a day-to-day basis, 2-3 minutes just to set something up. And you wouldn't even have to spend 2-3 minutes if you did a kind of bulk session, maybe at the beginning of the week, prepping some toys to just have them ready to go. 2-3 minutes a day to give your dog a world of excitement and fun and confidence, and to give them that enrichment. I know I'm saying the word enrichment just over and over and over, but it's the best way to describe what you're doing. You are enriching your dog's life with something as simple as a game.
You know what's funny? I tried to translate that word enrichment, dog enrichment, in another language, for example, Italian, and I cannot find the exact translation. It seems that now this English word, dog enrichment, contains so much information that is so difficult to translate it in another language with all the meanings that it has inside.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult to define as well. To me, enrichment is games and outings, but to someone else it could be, it means, novel things they've never experienced before and will never experience again. And then to someone else it could be, that just means a walk. Enrichment is such a broad, ever-evolving field. 3 years ago when I adopted Robert, the only kind of idea of enrichment was a Kong. Now it's building a dedicated sniffy garden for your dog. It's doggy daycares having dedicated sections. It's dog trainers and walkers offering specific services. And it's also people at home just digging through the recycling to find what they can offer their dog. It's just such an evolving word that I don't think it's actually physically able to define it or translate it because it's so quickly evolving.
That's right. It happens basically the same with some new technologies, for example, AR, VR. They use two terms like augmented reality, virtual reality. They carry, different meanings, but if you translate it in another language, it's so weird to explain. For example, to blockchain, like, you have to explain what is the blockchain. I say, no, okay, it's a chain of block, but it actually contains a lot of meanings. So that's great that actually we cannot find a translation, because it seems that it's a field that is growing. It's a new field and it's evolving so fast, as you said. So it's really exciting. We are in the middle of this, like, growth. That's great for dogs and for us.
Yeah, it's great to see. And it's actually spilling over from just dogs. I've seen more pages and people talking about like feline enrichment, enrichment for wild animals, enrichment for captive animals. I think it's really enrichment as a term, as we know it. I think that's going to be the next big thing in the pet world, not just the dog world, but the pet world. I think it's really, really getting there.
Funny story. We were doing some video, doing enrichment with a dog, and a cat was there. And this cat basically went there when we were doing enrichment, and he started to play. Like, he started to do the snuffle mat with the dog. And we said, what's happening? Like, why the cat is so interesting in the snuffle mat, like, searching the food as well. It was not the cat food too. So, I mean, it was really strange. But as you said, probably the cat as well, and all the animals, parrots, a lot of other animals, they are, so excited about enrichment. Like, they don't know yet, but they will be excited once the human will start to practice that with them.
I mean, it makes sense when you stop and think about it. The reason that we do it for dogs is to allow them to produce those natural behaviors. So if you do something that's slightly more tailored to cats, maybe like a smaller size snuffle mat that isn't going to like exhaust their whiskers, they're going to get just as much benefit from it. If you do something similar for a parrot, that's obviously slightly tailored for the fact that they have beaks to work with and claws, they're going to be just as excited. And then if you take that into zoos, who have historically always used some form of enrichment for their captive large animals. Like, how many times have you gone through a zoo and seen the chimpanzees with a phone book in it, like, so they can rip the pages? I've seen it in every zoo I've gone to, some form of enrichment.
Really?
So I think we're all, yeah, every zoo I go to, and obviously when you're looking for them, you'll find some kind of puzzle or some kind of game. I've seen loads of times heavy yellow phone books with fruit and food scattered through it. And it's almost like a snuffle mat, but for primates that have thumbs. And it's just interesting to see that if such a big facility can see the benefits in their captive animals, why are we as owners and animal pet owners so slow at the uptake? Now that's obviously catching up now, but 3 years ago it wasn't. 3 years ago it was just a Kong. They don't need it, it's just a Kong. Nowadays it's, what can I get for my dog?
Exactly. A few years ago, they were talking just about Kong, yes. And they were talking even just about mental, let's do some games to increase the brain of the dog, to let your dog become more intelligent. But that's actually was like a test, a school test, right, for dogs. Instead, the enrichment is much more than just give a test to the dog. It's basically, you will use these natural instincts to solve the game. And so it's not crazy stuff. They are just things that maybe you will do in the nature.
Yeah, and there are some enrichments that will kind of tailor to some of the more cleverer breeds, or the dogs that might just put 2 and 2 together. Historically, like border collies are always going to be a bit more savvy than maybe my greyhound, for example. There is benefits in that term of intelligence and confidence building in enrichment, but that's not the goal. I often see a lot of the time on some posts that both myself and other people put up, oh, enrichment is abuse. Enrichment, you're making a dog work for their food. This is awful. But I think those people are just missing the mark a little. It's not that we're making a dog work for food. It's that we're challenging a dog to use those instincts in a constructive manner. And there's a phenomenon known as contra freeloading that comes off the back of it. If you offer a dog a food in a bowl versus food scattered through snuffle mat, they will almost always choose the snuffle mat because they get so much more benefits from the mat. It's not just the food, it's the sniffing, it's the reducing of anxiety, it's the reducing of frustration, it's the happy hormones that are being released by the act of sniffing. The phenomenon of contra freeloading completely blows all those enrichment is abuse comments right out of the water. It's not so much challenging a dog, it's just letting a dog be natural.
That's totally right. Even because, studied showed that dogs find more interesting to look for the food, to search the food, than actually see that in the bowl. For the dog in nature, it's almost impossible to see the food in the bowl already prepared. They have to do something to have the food. And that's exactly the natural instinct that we were talking about. That's where they fit.
A wild canine isn't going to just find food in a bowl. It's going to tear something limb from limb to get it, and that's going to be enriching for them. So even offering your dog food in a bowl with a couple of tennis balls in it, or throwing it into a muffin tin to make a kind of slow feeder, is going to be so much more beneficial than just giving them a straight bowl.
Totally agree. So I think that we already talked about that, but can you say in a few words if the enrichment was useful for Robert? What was the biggest thing that Robert solved thanks to the enrichment?
For Robert, giving him enrichment outlet opened up him for training opportunities and desensitizing to what was at the time a very scary outside world. Something like some form of licky mat or snuffle mat before a walk just took the edge off him enough that when we did go out, he wasn't scared, he was cautiously optimistic. So for Robert, enrichment opened a door. That door was a wall before enrichment. He was too scared to even think about how outside could be fun, how outside could have friends and fun and adventures in it, because outside was just scary. We didn't want to leave because outside was loud with weird smells and dogs that barked at him and strange men that would yell at him. It was outside and scary. So enrichment before our walk opened him up to the possibility that outside might be fun. And then the resulting enrichment when we got home helped him settle and kind of work out any of the frustration or fear or anxiety that he might have picked up on that walk, because outside was still a little scary. So before and after was really just a game changer for him. It just helped him learn that outside is a great place to be. Outside has adventures and fun and friends, and it's not such a bad place after all.
Was it hard the first time that Robert did the dog enrichment? Like, what was the first dog enrichment that you did with him, and was it hard for him?
The very first enrichment that I can very clearly remember was an extra large, super tough Kong, and it was a disaster. I picked it up on the recommendation of a shop assistant in a pet store, just after saying, look, I'm having these minor issues and Facebook says I should try this and my dog trainer says I should try this, so I'm going to try this. Because I'd gotten the extra large one and because it was super tough, he couldn't figure it out. He got frustrated with it. He gave up on it, and it kind of shut him down a little bit then, because he was having such a hard time with this silly little toy. It just wasn't working for him. So we ditched it. I put that Kong in the cupboard, and I think it stayed in the cupboard for almost a year. And we went back to simple little things, which was a toilet paper roll with some food on the inside and the edges folded over, and not even folded over tightly, just lightly folded over. And watching him figure it out, it took him 2 or 3 minutes. He was a bit slow on the uptake, but once he got it, you could see the cogs whirring behind his eyes. You could see his brain thinking. And then the next time I gave it to him, he had it in a minute. And the next time, 30 seconds. And then I put that tube inside another box. Might have taken him a minute again. And then that box had paper in it, and it was a minute and a half. And we built up from the ground up. We did try some of the fancier puzzle toys as we kind of got better at it. You know, proper licky mats, we got it in the store. Or we did try Kongs again, and he knows how to work them now. But compared to that first ever time, which was just a disaster, he's come so far. We really did have to build from the ground up. Just something as simple as the recycling.
Robert is so lucky because, not all the dogs have the same mom for them, no? If I were a dog, I think that I would be lucky to have you as a mom.
You wouldn't be the first person to say that now. I think as enrichment has gotten more popular and people are getting more into it, you see those kind of comments popping up more of, oh, I better try this with my dog, or, oh, your dog is so lucky, or I want to be your dog in my next life. It's reassuring, I think, that we're all kind of figuring out this new path together, and that people can appreciate the little bit of effort that might go into some of the fancier puzzles and the fancier games.
Makes sense. Zoe, can you talk us about Robert? Like, what's the story of Robert?
My favorite topic, Robert. I decided to get a dog after I'd moved out of home and settled into my apartment here in Cork. I was 19 at the time. I was in college, normal kind of thing of, I can have a dog now. I have a good bit of experience with some problem dog behaviours and some minor medical issues, so I felt confident in offering a rescue dog a home. But I live in a very small apartment, so I wanted to make sure that the dog that was going to be homed with me would be comfortable in a smaller space. Obviously we'd do all our walks and whatnot, but I wanted a dog that was going to be okay in a smaller apartment in a city centre. So I turned to Google, top 10 dogs for apartment. Every time in the top 10 a greyhound came up, which made no sense to me.
Yeah.
But the more Googling I did, the more I realized, yeah, greyhounds make great apartment pets. They're big, but they sleep for 20 odd hours a day. They like their walk, but they haven't generally got a huge amount of stamina, so they're not being walked for hours. So I kind of had a Google around of other rescues in the area, and there was thousands of greyhounds in shelters here. Thousands, all looking for homes. So I kind of felt confident, maybe I should kind of think more about a greyhound. And it just happened that a greyhound specific rescue, a rescue that only takes in greyhounds, was having a meet and greet in one of the pet shops local to me. So my housemate at the time and I went out and walked in, and there was the biggest dog I'd ever seen in my life. They had brought 2 dogs with them to kind of meet the public. This massive brindle boy called Cooper, who was so excited and bubbly and out there and, oh my God, hello. And this tiny, tiny little black girl called Serena, who was so shy and nervous. And I remember standing between the 2 of them and looking at the 2 of them and thinking, I can't have either of these. Cooper is too big and excitable. He's going to hate living in an apartment. And although Serena looks like she might be a better fit for her apartment, she wouldn't be able to deal with the traffic. She's too scared. And then this tiny little brindle greyhound gate crashed the event. She'd been adopted a couple of years before, but had decided to just gate crash to say hi to some other greyhounds. And she was just perfect. She was small and petite, but she was confident, and that greyhound's name was Molly. So after I kind of was like, yeah, I could have a Molly in my house. I could do with a Molly. I signed up to the adoption application. I had my home check about a week later, and funny enough, Cooper, the big bubbly greyhound, was the one who did my home check. And while he was kind of bopping around my apartment, I kind of got my head around the idea that maybe a bigger greyhound wasn't such an impossible thing. I passed that home check. And then another week later, I was driving up to Kerry to have a look at the rescue up there and have a look at the dogs they had in kennels. And I had been in contact with the rescue in the meantime, explaining, look, I'm a college student, I'm working part-time, we don't have a very set schedule, it's a small apartment, it's in the city, do you have any dogs that might be a bit more adaptable? And they said, yeah, come on up. And the first dog they brought out was this massive blonde fawn greyhound who just plodded on over, licked my hand, they handed me the leash. I took him for a short walk around the little compound, and he just stood there and leaned against my leg. That was Robert, and I couldn't get him out of my head. They convinced me to meet a couple of other greyhounds whilst I was up there. Another little brindle dog, a small little black greyhound. But it was Robert sitting in the corner, this big dopey head on him. Massive dog, huge, the biggest greyhound I've met, like. He towers over the rest of them. And I knew it was him. He was coming home with me there and then. And yeah, he had some issues in the beginning, but we started meeting up quite regularly with Molly, the little brindle greyhound that had convinced me to get a greyhound. And just through that little bit of social interaction, he blossomed into such a confident dog. Off the back of that, then working with some trainers, working with enrichment games, and just kind of teaching him that outside isn't such a scary place. He has opened up to be one of the most adaptable, confident, social dogs I've ever met in my life. I would be lost without him. He's my boy. I could take on the world if I had Robert by my side.
A woman, a man with a dog by his side or her side, that's the best thing in life. I think that it was born like that, the dog, right? Basically, the human had different necessity a lot of years ago, and the dog was just the right fit. Now they are the exact fit of what we need right now. They help us relieve stress. They help us conducting a healthier life because, you have to go out. I love the story of Robert. When you go to adopt a dog, which dog will be your dog. Like, that's weird, right?
It makes no sense when you look at it on a piece of paper. Like, how can you know that this animal in front of you is meant to be? But I've heard similar stories over and over and over again. And having experienced it myself, it makes sense. Sometimes you just know. And for me, it was always supposed to be Robert. It can't have been on the other way. If I try and imagine life without him, it doesn't make sense. If I try and substitute any of the other dogs that I was shown with Robert, it doesn't make any sense. It was always just supposed to be Zoe and Robert.
I'm so emotional with this because that was the same with my dog. So I can totally understand you. When we went in the shelter, I think that, you always have at least a dog in each shelter that is meant for you. In fact, a lot of people don't want to go to the shelter so often because they are worried.
They'll come home with them all.
Yeah.
Like, we all work towards that, don't we? the day we have a big house and a massive garden and room for 20, 30 dogs, happy out. Like, but until then, it's just me and Rob.
I think with what we are discussing right now, many dogs can be helped because you have a lot of dogs around that they are just at home without doing nothing. Maybe some games sometimes, they go out, but practicing the dog enrichment, for me, it's weird that a simple thing like dog enrichment is not used basically in the daily life of all the people that have a dog. That's weird, right? You can make a dog happy with nothing.
Yeah, I think when people think of dog ownership, enrichment isn't generally on that kind of list of things you need when you're bringing your puppy or your dog home. People think, oh yeah, I gotta get, beds and bowls and collars so I can train them to walk, and I gotta get a tennis ball so we can play fetch. But they don't think about anything other than those basics. And yeah, a game of fetch can be physically enriching, but it's a very repetitive game. It's a very focused game. There's only one outlet to that, and that's retrieve the ball. Versus something as simple as turning that game of fetch into, oh, well, here's some treats to the side to sniff when you come back to me. Makes the fetch game into a puzzle game, makes it into an enriching game. I think enrichment isn't generally on that list for people, but it is changing. I see it in my part-time work in pet retail, more and more people coming in looking for those toys, the expensive ones, and seeing the price, and we have that chat of, why don't you try this instead? I think it is slowly getting more and more onto the scene, but on a day-to-day basis, I'd say a lot of dogs out there, they're not getting anything other than a walk, maybe a game of fetch. Maybe if the food bowl gets dropped, they get a kind of pseudo snuffle mat, and they'd be lucky to get those kind of things. There's not a huge focus on enrichment as a necessity in dog ownership. It's kind of seen as optional. And to me personally, I don't think it should be considered optional. I think enrichment is a necessity. You wouldn't expect a human to go to school or work or college and come straight home and go to sleep. No. So why are we expecting dogs to do the equivalent? It goes back to the whole fact of enrichment is play. It's natural behaviors. And I think because people do expect a dog to just get on with life, get up, go for a walk, come home, eat dinner, go to sleep, that's why we see such an increase in what people keep calling bad behaviors. They bark because they're bored. They chew because they're bored. They lick the skirting boards because they're bored. They eat the socks and shoes and slippers because they're bored. These bad behaviors are popping up more and more because people aren't giving them those outlets. And because the world we live in is a little bit more confining than it might have been 20, 30, 40 years ago, dogs don't get even natural enrichment in the garden when they're running around chasing the smells that the fox left behind the night before. They don't get those natural kind of everyday enrichments. So we as responsible owners kind of do need to step in a little and provide some kind of outlet. It's a necessity, not an option. And I do think people are starting to realize that more and more.
Yeah, actually, I think that probably the best way to change this is to let the shelters, the breeders know that they have to do dog enrichment to help them to change the environment. Because if you change from the shelter or from the breeder to your home, for sure your dog will need to adapt. So probably enrichment could be an activity that help them to adapt and an habit that the owner can adopt during the dog's life. Like, if you do that from since the beginning, probably it will be easier to have this habit in the long term.
Yeah, if you start from the beginning, it'll really open you up. Now, I didn't start from the very, very beginning, and look where we are now. I think it's one of those things people often do think, oh, my dog's too old for enrichment. He's a senior dog. He won't get any benefit. Every breed and creed, size and age of dog can benefit in some manner. And if you do start from the beginning, you're going to get off to a very good foot, especially with puppies or dogs that are coming straight from shelters, because they are going to be that little bit more unsettled, or puppies are obviously going to be teething. You do get a bit of a head start on that. But it's never too late to pick up enrichment. You're probably already doing it every now and again in some manner. It might be something as simple as letting the dog lick the plate clean. Like, that's a rough licky mat right there. Or it might be, the dog's here, shred this piece of paper, have fun with that boy. It's pseudo enrichment, like you're getting there. I think it's just the practice of getting your head around the idea of doing it every day. I think that's where the main problem kind of tends to lie. But as you said, the more the conversation continues, the more that the shelters, the breeders, The other dog owners, the trainers, the walkers, the more I talk to my friend, the more she talks to her friend, the more he talks to his friend, the more the conversation continues, I think you're going to see a more increased activity in terms of enrichment. And on the back of that, happier, healthier dogs.
Well said. A lot of people think that dogs can change lives. And I'm one of that people, right? How Robert changed your life? It was meant to be, you said. But what happened in your life with Robert?
From the moment I brought Robert home, my life just changed. For the better. Like there's no way of making it out any other way. He got me more active. We were out walking. We got talking to people. He opened up my social life. He put me in contact with so many people I never would have met any other way other than, oh, you've got a dog? I've got a dog too. You've got a greyhound? I've got a greyhound too. The community that I have become a part of through getting a dog has just been so welcoming and supportive in all manners. And it's not just, oh, dog people look after dog people. These are now my good friends. And they're people I never would have met any other way. I'm a 23-year-old college student. What have I got in common with a 38-year-old woman with kids? Like, turns out we have a dog. And we have a lot more in common other than that. And now we're great friends. We go out for coffee, like. Little things like that. Dogs open up your world. If you give them the chance, they'll come into your life and they'll just make it 100 times better. For me, adopting Robert just opened me up completely. I went from the new wash-in in town, the weird college lady up on the top floor, to, oh, that's the girl with the greyhound. And it just life changed from there.
Yeah, I mean, it's better to be known like, oh, she's the girl with the greyhound.
Yeah, but we have had a couple of miscommunications because his name is Robert. The rescue named him Robert, but I thought it was a very good name and I stuck with it. We have had a number of people think that Robert is a human that has moved in with me, that goes to the pub with me, that we watch movies together with. And I can kind of see why sometimes, the way I talk about him. But yeah, that is a common miscommunication. That's my party trick of.
In a way, it's true, right? He's your boy.
He is my boy. Yeah, that's probably the best way to describe him. It's just, he's my boy.
So based on that, what do you want to say to all the people that want to take a dog, but they are scared that they cannot give their dog, to the adopted dog, the best life possible?
If you are in a position that you are willing and capable to take in a dog, do your research. Obviously, I did my research and found a greyhound was the best fit. Talk to the rescues, talk to the shelters, talk to the people in your community. There's bound to be the perfect fit for you out there somewhere. Don't be afraid. People often think, oh, getting a dog is going to limit my social life because I have to go home to Fido. I can't leave Fido home all day alone. And yeah, in the beginning, you might not. You have to have some realistic expectations there. But as you work with your dog, as you bond with your dog, they are going to open up a completely new social life. And you don't need to ditch your old social life. I still go to the pub with my friends. It's just that Robert's there with me too. I bring a blanket and he's asleep in the corner. Dogs can pretty much go everywhere. Like, as long as you have your dog, there's nothing holding you back. Just take it slow and steady. Make sure you find the right dog for you and your lifestyle, and keep in touch with the shelters and the breeders. A reputable breeder and a responsible shelter, they'll always have your back.
Thank you, Zoe. The last thing that I would ask you, I know that you do like leaky mats that are artwork, a piece of art, right? I know that. I think that a lot of people know that. So we can give a gift to the people that are seeing this video and they are here, they are seeing the video until now. Can you give us a simple recipe for a leaky mat?
My number one go-tos is a tin of sardines, a ripe banana, and some porridge oats. You mix up the porridge oats with some warm water, spread it over, mash up your banana, and some good smelly sardines on top. Always go down well. Really, at the end of the day though, there's no limits to licky mats. Whatever your dog likes, you can throw on one.
And you can use a simple plate, right?
You can use a plate, you can use your dog's bowl. If you smear stuff around the edge and stick it in the freezer for 5-10 minutes, it firms everything up, and that's a really cheap and easy one. You can use a plate. If you pop into a garden centre, you'll often find some really cheap terracotta dishes with some odd grooves in them for drainage. I have a couple of them. If you go to any discount store, you'll often find really cheap like silicone mats. They're often advertised as like makeup brush cleaners. You pick them up for a couple of cents. They're a great alternative. Once you kind of start getting creative, you'll find that there's always something you can use. Nothing really limits you.
Thank you, Zoe. Thank you for this gift.
I'm delighted to be on. It's one of my favourite topics to talk about. That, and Robert.
All right, okay. So thanks guys to watch this video. Subscribe if you want more content like that. And in the future, we can have Zoe again to talk about dog enrichment. If you want to start dog enrichment that you don't know where to start, you can always download Geppo. It's an easy to use app. It will guide you. You start from the easy stuff and you go through the more difficult dog enrichment games. Like the video, please. Share the video with a friend that you think that would be interested to this. And Zoe, thank you again.
Delighted to be here. Enrichment is such an upcoming field. I'm always happy to talk about it in some manner or capacity.
Bye, guys.